Today, I'll be ranking every single monster indoors from worst to best. If you don't know what Doors is, it's basically a Roblox horror game where you travel in a hotel passing through doors, and your goal is to get to door 100. Seems simple, but there are multiple entities that try to stop you. There are 24 monsters indoors as of now, each with their own abilities. But before we get to the rankings, we first need to answer one question. What makes a monster good? Well, in order to determine that, I split the judging criteria into 4 categories. First is the scariness, which is how scary the monster is. This is a horror game after all, so it's important if the monster is scary or not. Second is the concept, which is how unique or interesting the concept of the monster's ability is. Third is the execution, which is how well the monster's concept was executed. So this doesn't mean that the concept and execution rely on each other. A monster can have bad concept but a good execution, and vice versa. And finally, there's the enjoyability, which is how much the monster makes the game enjoyable. If it has a low enjoyability score, then it's considered to be an annoying monster. This also includes glitches and bugs that come with the monsters too. Now, even though this may seem like an analysis, this is still just my opinion. Oh, and one more thing. Even though there are 24 monsters indoors, 9 of them I wasn't able to rank due to a missing category or 2. So, I'll be briefly talking about them and why they're not on the list. Glitch is a monster that appears either when you're far away from your friends or when a room doesn't load. You can't really measure enjoyability on something that is needed for the game, and it doesn't affect the gameplay. Next, there's Window. To be honest, just remove him from the game. He literally serves no purpose. Guiding Light is the only entity in the game that helps you, so he's really not intended to be scary or anything like that. However, Shadow is. He's also super rare, being a 1 in 2,000 chance. He doesn't affect the gameplay much though. El Goblino, Jeff, and Bob are not on the list for very obvious reasons. Void is basically a replacement of Glitch, except it's a fade to black transition, and Curious Light is basically just Guiding Light if it was not as helpful. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the rankings. Y'all really expected Screech to be last place, huh? Although Screech is bad, I think Snare is worse. With a 5 out of 20, Snare is a monster that appears in the greenhouses, which are part of the last few rooms. In those rooms, there are no lights, and rush can come at any moment, so you have to rely on sound. Snare basically comes out of the ground and bites you, making you stop in place for a few seconds. The greenhouses are already hard enough, so Snare just makes it extra annoying, especially when Rush is coming after you. The only reason it has a 5 is because of the execution, otherwise it would have been a 1. Screech is known to be the most annoying entity in the entire game, and I say it lives up to its title, considering it has a 6 out of 20. Screech is an entity that appears in dark rooms, where the gimmick is it makes a pfft sound, and you have 2 seconds to find where it is. If you don't, you get bitten. The concept is already really annoying, especially since it's in the dark, so it doesn't help that sometimes it appears even without it making a sound. And other than those occurrences, Screech isn't even that scary. It's just annoying. I guess it's scary for new players, but this is still my opinion after all. A120 is 1 out of the 3 entities in the rooms. The rooms are a secret place in the game based on the game that inspired Doors, which is called, well, Rooms. With a 7 out of 20, A120 is basically just a rip-off version of A60 and Ambush, except more annoying. Unlike Ambush and A60, it only spawns after a room in lockers, which means when he spawns, you have to go back into the previous room to hide, which is super unhelpful. But hey, at least you can rely on the sound, I guess. Even though A90 is higher than A120, Screech, and Snare, having an 8 out of 20, I will consider A90 more annoying than all of them. A90's gimmick is basically it will randomly appear on your screen without warning, and you have half a second to stop whatever you're doing and stay still. Otherwise, it will give you a loud jump scare. The monster is pure hell for people playing this game with no help, because even Curious Light doesn't give any help on passing him, since this is in the rooms, so it seems like he died for no reason. The only reason why it's so high up is because of the scariness. It's so unexpected and just startles you out of nowhere. But this monster is basically a run killer for someone trying to beat the rooms. Also with an 8 out of 20 is Timothy. Timothy was actually really close to being a non-rateable monster, but I cited that it does have an enjoyability score, which is a 0. Timothy is just a cheap jump scare, and while it doesn't affect the gameplay, it is annoying. It does give you a spook though, I'll tell you that. Also with an 8 out of 20 is Hyde, which can only appear in a closet. His gimmick is that he forces you out of the closet and deals half damage after a certain period of time, which is kind of useless since if you hid there forever, you wouldn't be able to progress the game anyways. Hyde would have been in last place if it wasn't for two things: ambush and all the doors after door 50. Once you pass the door 50, Hyde kicks you out after a shorter period of time than normal, so you can't just go into a closet immediately once you hear rush. And as for ambush, Hyde will kick you out of the closet without dealing any damage during an ambush attack. So you have to go out and in the closet over and over again instead of just staying in the closet throughout the entire ambush attack. This not only boosts the hide score, but ambushes too, since it makes ambush more engaging. Nonetheless, this still doesn't change the fact that hide isn't scary at all, and it's useless if it isn't one of these two things. A60 is just rush, but without the lights flickering, so you have to go by sound. There's not much to it, considering it got a 10 out of 20. However, I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes I don't even hear A60 until 3 seconds before it attacks. It could just be bad headphones or something like that, or bad hearing. Jack is a monster that can randomly appear either when you're opening a closet or when you're opening a door. And he's supposed to be just a quick jump scare. 11 out of 20, Jack's concept was executed really well, even if the concept is bad. However, it's super unhelpful, especially when you're trying to hide from rush, ambush, or figure. There's literally a video of a kid getting jacked during door 50 and bursting into tears.
No, you're really doing me.
I feel so bad for laughing at this, oh my god. Okay, we're finally getting to the monsters that I actually like now. Ice's gimmick is basically you're supposed to avoid looking at it. If you don't, it will deal damage rapidly until you stop looking at it. This concept kind of reminds me of the Greek goddess Medusa, where if you look at her, you'll get turned into stone. Even though it's not scary, it excels in its other categories, which is why I got a 14 out of 20. The only problem with it, aside from scariness, is that sometimes it spawns right after your seek chase, which can be pretty annoying, but other than that, it's fine. Also, it's kind of hard to make it scary when you can't even look at it. I guess you can make it have unsettling sound design, or give it a different and scary form once you look at it. Also with a 14 out of 20 is Rush, being the most common entity indoors, and if you think about it, it's really good. Rush's gimmick, if you haven't caught on already, is that when he's coming, the lights will flicker. Once that happens, you have to hide in the closet while Rush is, well, rushing into the room. If you don't hide, then you'll get killed instantly. This is a really cool concept, and he uses his surroundings to his advantage. And he's much more relevant in the greenhouses, where, as I said earlier, he comes without the lights flickering. But just like Eyes, it isn't that scary, at least for me. I can see why some people think it's scary though. Another minor problem with Rush, aside from scariness, is that if you put on a potato or something with really bad graphics, some of the lights don't flicker for you, so you don't even know it's Rush. But I'm assuming most of your devices run just fine, so let's move on. Rush also has a counterpart too, which I surprisingly like more in Rush, considering it has a 15.5 out of 20. The difference between Rush and Ambush is that Ambush can rebound multiple times, as mentioned earlier. Hyde can kick you out at any moment, so you gotta be careful. Even though the concept is kind of mid, it's executed so well. And this may be unpopular, but I think Ambush is a really scary monster. From his sound design to his creepy PNG face. Hall is criminally underrated. With a 16.5, the only reason I think of someone hating Hall is because it's speedruns. But other than that, it has a pretty neat concept, which is basically you're in a really long hallway, and text will flash that will say turn around. You have to turn around when it says that. Well, no duh, what else are you supposed to do? To be honest, I prefer the Hall before the update, since the message was really subtle, compared to now where it's blatantly obvious. It's still a really neat concept though. Also, the sound design is really freaking good. Okay, we're finally in my top 3 favorites, and I bet you didn't expect Dupe to be this high. Well, it may come as a surprise. I think Dupe is actually really cool, which is why I gave it an 18 out of 20. Dupe's gimmick is that it will spawn in a room with 2 doors. One is fake, one is real, and you have to use a number from the previous door to figure out which door to go into. If you go into the wrong door, he jump scares you and takes half your health. Here's the kicker. The number on the previous door and all the doors before that will be scribbled out, meaning that you have to keep track of the door while playing. Now, this may be annoying to you, but I think it's a genius concept and takes advantage of something that you only notice occasionally. The only thing that can exploit this concept is one is a key room, since the number of the correct door is on the key. Also with an 8 out of 20 is Seek, and it's one of the only 2 monsters that has a very scripted room for it. He can spawn between doors 20 and 30 and between doors 70 and 80. And a few rooms before he spawns, a bunch of eyes will appear on the wall. This will also prevent rush and ambush from coming too. After a few rooms, you encounter a very long hallway, and Seek will pop out of the ground and force you into an elaborate chase sequence. And if you're slow enough, he'll catch you and kill you. This is a really swift change of place to the really quiet aura of the rooms previously. And it's really intimidating too. It's like a really big adrenaline rush. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. That's right, the best monster indoors, in my opinion, is Figure, with a 19 out of 20. It is the main monster of the game after all. Figure is the other monster that has very scripted rooms for it. At door 50, you'll be put into the library with Figure. Figure is a blind monster, but his other senses surpass ours, so you have to crouch the whole time. While the monster itself isn't complicated, the room it's in is, which I will include in the score since you won't see these rooms with any other monster. Anyways, in the library, you have to find specific books, which will be highlighted. Each book will have a shape and a number that corresponds to the shape. You also have to get a paper, which will show 5 shapes you have to decode and type into this lock, which will help you escape the library. It's complicated, sure, but this is probably the most fun part in the entire game. This isn't the first time you will encounter Figure though. You will also encounter him at door 100. Now before the update, you have to find the key in the elevator, then unlock a room, then turn on the power, and then run into the elevator. While that's cool, the new door 100 room is even better and even more intense. In the new room, you have to find a key, then unlock a room, just like last time. This time, however, you have to find 10 switches in order to do the rest. Once you do, you place them into the power generator, turn on the power, then run into the elevator. While it may not be that different, the environment and music is much more intimidating. I've been talking about the rooms a lot, so let's talk about the Figure itself. Figure really puts a bunch of weight and tension on you, especially at door 100, and it's terrifying. Its roar is pretty scary, and it's really terrifying hearing his footsteps come closer and closer. And if he's coming after you, just hope there's a closet nearby. And that concludes my list of every single Doors monster from Worst to Best. Once again, this is just my opinion. If you want to share your opinions, feel free to type it in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and with that, peace.